How to inspire and attract her feminine attention. That's what we're talking about here today on the C Note Show. We're going to get into the staircase of intimacy, the three pieces, the three stairwells of the staircase of intimacy, and how that relates to inspiring her attraction, verbal and emotional intimacy, shared vision, and physical intimacy. We want to, of course, lead her and inspire her to safety, trust, shared adventure. And here on the C Note Show, we talk about how to lead and love with mojo like a king, how to avoid mistakes and solve deep marriage problems. Here with myself and Cynthia Cruz. And like I say, Cynthia and I have over 50,000 hours combined in this field, education, psychology, and specializing in relationships and intimacy, and how to instill more intimacy within the space in between, within that third entity in between, right? There's you, there's her, and there's the relationship space, or the we space. And how do we instill more femininity and attention and attraction from her, even from a place of separation, of I love you, but I'm not in love with you. I'm not sure what I want. And she's not sure how to tell you what she wants. And you're not sure how to move forward. That's what we speak about here on the C Note Show, all the way up to amazing depth and connection and intimacy. So the staircase of intimacy, that you men that are here live right now, I want you to punch into the chat. Maybe you're in a different relationship, by the way. Some men are in the place now where they are dating other women, or they're dating one particular other woman beyond their marriage. Maybe you're in that spot, or maybe you're in separation with your wife, either in the same house or in a different location, or maybe you're not there yet, but it's cold. She's disconnected most likely, or she's angry and blaming you. Maybe you haven't had the separation conversation yet, but sex isn't going well. Intimacy, closeness isn't going well. So which of these three areas confuses you the most of how to move forward from where you are now? So with where you are right now, picture a woman in your mind, or maybe you're dating multiple women or none at all. Which of these three confuses you the most? How to grow verbal and emotional intimacy with your woman, how to grow a shared vision with a woman or your woman, or how to grow physical intimacy from this place where you are now. So punch into the chat, either one or two or three, or verbal and emotional intimacy is most confusing for you, how to build a shared vision is most confusing for you, or how to build physical intimacy is most confusing for you where you are right now. So punch that into the chat. While you guys do that, I'm going to read quickly a post from the forum. This man says, thinking out loud and would be grateful and curious about your guys' experience and perspective. It's been since January since my wife and I separated. Ever since January, the degree of intimacy has been on a steep decline. After having what seemed to be the best sex we've had in years, a few weeks after separating, and then after Valentine's Day being the last time we kissed. There's been essentially no physical touch since then. She made it pretty apparent that she wasn't or isn't open to physical intimacy, and once I sensed that, I stopped inviting her into that. It's been an interesting experience to realize how much validation and being okay I sourced from the intimacy we had before. It's of course painful that she's retracted in this way, and yet it's also made me realize how to source that validation and satisfaction within myself without needing her to give me the pacifier of her physical touch. With that said, I'm curious if you guys would or have been through something similar, and if you started inviting that physical touch back into the picture after giving her a good bit of space and reestablishing the emotional intimacy first, or if you would go on allowing her to be the one to initiate that physical touch, since she is the one who retracted in the first place. I ask this from a place of curiosity, as I've gotten to a new place now where I'm accepting of the possible reality of our relationship version 2.0 not happening, while still holding the outcome independent intention of creating that version 2.0 with her, given her potential openness to it. So he still is having that hope, that intention, that path that he wants to cross version 2.0 with her, but he's also paradoxically accepting that he can't control the outcome and that version 2.0 may not happen. Either way, cheers to you all, and looking forward to continuing to learn and grow into the man I am becoming every day. So Cynthia, firstly, what's the vibe that you're getting from this man? Obviously, his separated wife may feel differently than what you might say, but what's the vibe that you're getting from him overall about his own sense of emotional awareness of himself, a vision for himself, and let's say intimacy with himself. If I apply the staircase of intimacy to him for his own self, what's the vibe that you're getting from this man?
Yeah, I actually feel my heart get really warm tapping into his energy, because it feels like there's this confidence in the very words that he says, and confidence and a like building of solidity. And I feel that not so much from like the perfect words that he says, but that I can feel the masculine knowing of self and his unwillingness to step back or make himself smaller for someone else, and to also hold a vision forward. It's this very opening experience in my feminine of curiosity, of his presence and his path, and this solid energy I feel in him is like a curious. My feminine gets very curious.
It's almost like there's space for you to be curious about him. He's not trying to seek and take.
Yeah, and I would say sometimes when there's that seek and take energy, that like my stomach and my solar plexus kind of twists in a protective mode, and this is the opposite of that.
Yeah, thank you. Let me ask about this particular sentence here, your initial impressions. Have you started inviting physical touch back into the picture in his spot here after giving her space, and reestablishing the emotional intimacy first? So establish emotional intimacy, and then he started inviting physical touch, or allowing her to be the one to initiate that physical touch, since she's the one who retracted it in the first place. That's different than maybe if she were to say, some women who are in therapy, especially, they'll get the idea, or the therapist will give them the idea, to have the woman tell the man that she's going to do all the physical initiation, which we don't have to get into the weeds of that today, but that can put the man in a kind of a bind, a leadership type of bind. But here he's saying because she's the one who's retracted it in the first place. So she maybe hasn't said anything about physical touch. So let's go from there. Reestablishing emotional intimacy, which we'll talk about here on this call. And should he start inviting physical intimacy in some way, or wait, basically? What would you say is the initial impression, or what other questions would you be curious about this man's spot?
Yeah, I mean, one question I'd want to ask him was what his perception of emotional intimacy is, how he watches that in her. Does he find how does she respond when he's building emotional intimacy? Because that is huge. And I think sometimes women do get stuck in the therapeutic mindset that, well, if I just have all emotional intimacy, then everything else will feel easy. And emotional intimacy is so enormous for her. That's like the bones of her body need. However, if she's the one then needing to initiate the re-engagement, you're automatically putting her into a more masculine frame. And so she's going to have to push up against all the feminine layers of how she can compartmentalize away from that, or how something else is more important. And it really doesn't invite her into a more feminine receiving place where she can actually feel emotions inside of her, or sensations inside of her.
Yeah, well said. So the emotional intimacy is the bones of what she's seeking and wanting as a feminine creature. So what to do in the physical part, we could talk about today. We also talk about in our one-on-one coaching and in our private membership groups as well. So let's start with what y'all have put into the chat, and we'll jump off from there. My wife wants to work on being friends again before anything else, and that leaves little room to grow emotional intimacy or physical intimacy. So say a little bit more about emotional intimacy when a woman is wanting to grow something in the relationship, she is wanting something, versus when she's shelled off and doesn't want any relationship. What's the potential of growing emotional intimacy? What does that feel like? It's a big question, but what does that feel like to you?
So when she really doesn't want to lean into relationship, her wanting just emotional intimacy is a way to feel really comfortable in your presence in a more platonic zone. And it's not a lot of room for her to actually feel into her body of how she feels romantically, what she wants sexually. And then if she is really like, it is, I do want relationship with this man. I do want romantic relationship with this man. The emotional intimacy part can be like water soothing old bruises and wounds inside her body, and really can have a shift and effect on what she's been closed down to in the past, and even her perception of you in partnership.
Yeah. Where do I start? Probably a shared vision as we are separated. So that might be the most difficult place. So let's briefly say, why would she want to have a holiday together, Easter together, spring break together, plan a trip with the kids over the summer? That kind of a shared vision, but she doesn't know or doesn't want to talk about, or stop asking, stop being needy. You're being needy. Stop asking me so many questions. When a man potentially brings up a vision for them together, how is that different from one another?
Yes, it's so confusing, isn't it? She wants to play in the polar container of family vision, and that can be for her a really separate space than romantic partnership. And in that space of family vision, she gets to feel like she's not alone, that she's protected, that she's safe in community. And she can really get stuck in that world, that's all she needs and all that she wants. And that's a very different space than also allowing the container in the pool of, this is deep sensual relationship to feel and have vision for and have excitement for, and hearing your depth and eye for where romance goes, where physicality goes. And she can still want that and then get kind of hooked and stuck on like old hurts and old bruises. But again, if she's willing to play in that pool, there is a way for her to move past those and into that kind of connection and intimacy that you are holding the vision for. So
let me ask, I also want to say, gentlemen, that a woman that will have a certain range of parenting skills, of mothering skills, that she's may or may not be aware of, may not be conscious of how good of a mom she is or how much she likes being a mother, something that we've seen a lot in this work that most people aren't aware of. And then she may have advanced or very poor relationship skills. So even if she does want shared vision, mm-hmm. she may be very poor at talking about that, being open to that. What have you seen working with women about that in particular? Not the mothering skills, which that's a thing we could talk about, and how much she likes being a mom. That's kind of a taboo subject. But specifically here, her skills in relationship. Like, she may not be very good at being open to vision or sharing or being open to what she wants. Talk about that.
Yeah. And that in itself can be very frustrating, because if you're learning here how important that is, and then you bring it to her and she has responses of, I don't know what you're talking about, or she kind of freezes, or you even ask her, well, what do you want? And there's just a total and complete unknown in her. That can be very, very real. And that's because in her life, she's never practiced those skills before, or she's highly practiced of not connecting to what she wants. In terms of the romantic vision or even family vision. And I guess the key piece to that is, that doesn't mean that she can't. And it doesn't mean that in one conversation it's like, oh, she doesn't get it or want it. There is time that those type of things can filter into her. And maybe one time that you talk about it, there's some little point that is in there that she starts to process. And it can be a skill that she can learn with you and become more comfortable with, no matter how initially it makes her feel a little uncomfortable and unknown and uncertain.
And it's a skill from your point as well, guys. I mean, if you're garden needs watering and you launch a fire truck hose into your garden, right? It's going to blast away the garden. That's not going to be appropriate. If you just take 1 cup of water and you pour it into your garden, that may not be appropriate or efficient or sufficient either. So part of what we teach is how to meet her where she's at, which has many variables, and we could certainly talk about. That's why specific scenarios are so important. Yeah, again, I can hear guys probably compiling questions. So raise your hand, jump in. And after this next one, I'll open it up for anyone that wants to come in as well. So next man in chat. My wife gives mixed signals, staying at the house during the day, even massages, but no intimacy, taking it beyond slow. Mixed signals, staying at the house during the day, even gives you massages. Yeah, who posted that? Please come on in. Able to come in and talk about this? I'm not sure if he's able to come in and talk.
Hey, that was me, Jeff.
Yeah, please go for it. So talk with us about that. How do you mean she's giving you, like, what kind of massages are we talking about? Like, what are we talking about here? Go for it.
Just basic, right? I would say, on the legs, could get up to the buttocks area and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's nothing, there's touch, but it's not.
So you're giving her a massage, or she's giving you?
Yes, I am, because she's pretty active, right? Very active, very athletic, and all that other stuff. So as a guy, you can imagine where the brain is going, right? It's like, I don't ever cross the line, because I got to respect her boundaries also, right? But at the end of the day, being a man, I think inherently it's like you're wondering, is this something good, right? Or is this just a massage? Now, cognitively speaking, I know it's just a massage. You just kind of wish it's a little bit more.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for coming in. I'll press pause on you and we'll talk about it. That's very clear. So there's different sides to this, right, guys? And I'll ask Cynthia's professional point of view here, feminine professional point of view, because this is the call today with the C-Note show. Certainly Cynthia, there's some type of emotional intimacy there. She has some kind of trust. She feels safe in some type of way with him, right? In this scenario, there's no particular vision. We're not talking about vision in this scenario. And there's certainly some kind of physical intimacy. And I want to ask you now, there is an unspoken kind of game often around massages, right? Like we've all seen the movie about the foot. What is the movie about the foot rub? And I just lost the name. Pulp Fiction. We've all seen Pulp Fiction with, like, it's just a foot massage, right? He's like, would you give me a foot massage? My feet are feeling pretty tired right now. Maybe your buddy would give you. So a man isn't going to give another man a butt massage or a foot massage, but a woman can, like, pretend in her reality that this butt massage is not intimate.
Yeah.
So talk with us about how a woman thinks of that. Like, I want to ask, like a guy would ask, does she really not think it's intimate? Is she just bullshitting herself that it's not intimate so she can put herself in that place? Does she know damn well it's intimate and she doesn't care, and she's wanting her man who's basically separated in the same house to go ahead and give her a sports massage? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, one wondering I had was the, like, taking it beyond slow. I was just curious of time frame of how long this has been, like, her, like, comfort zone. She absolutely could be in the energy of, I need a sports massage, here's this person I trust to do that, and just kind of take. There's also a woman can feel the intimacy, the physical and emotional intimacy of her legs being massaged and her glute muscles being massaged. And then, like, her genitals, her abdomen are a whole nother energy for her, where she can feel very, very, it can be a very vulnerable in a good way or a tough way. And so I could see her using this massage as a protection from feeling vulnerable and receiving more of your energy. And it gives me, like, questions and wonderings how, like, the masculine frames things so well with vision and purpose. If that kind of energy would give her the gateway to being more vulnerable, because I don't think she has that from just the energy. I feel that capacity herself to really invite more past that kind of wall that she's put up on that part of her body.
So we'd have to talk with him more specifically about that. So let's circle around. I want to go to Paul first, and then we'll come back to you, Zoom user. Yeah, Paul, please. Thanks for raising your hand. Come on in.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So what Cynthia described a couple minutes ago is like my wife to a T. She had a very, very difficult upbringing, with her parents and her living situation. I mean, just like went straight to the core of like her upbringing from about the time she was 7, into early adulthood. And my parents were the complete opposite, very open, very warm, very welcoming, talked about everything. There wasn't really anything I couldn't tell my parents, although I kept a lot of secrets from them, right? But the point was I always felt comfortable going to them because they were a source of reliability, and she didn't have that. And I see that in her now when we try to talk about this stuff, right? Even non-sexual stuff like emotional intimacy. And I think she knows what she wants. She just can't communicate it very well. And so, that's where I get really frustrated. And that's where my growth lies, right? To navigate that space and figure out how to be there for her without getting all pissed off in my own head about how things are going. But frustration it just kind of scratches the surface with regard to how to handle that over a long period of time. It's like that clock that I think a lot of guys feel is ticking that we really shouldn't focus on, but it's there. It's like, you can't just ignore that. Right. And so all these crazy questions start to come to my mind, like, well, what if she never comes around and can figure this out? Or, what if I continue growing and we essentially just grow apart because she's not really following, so to speak. Right. And so I don't know if I have a question, but I'm just trying to explain what I see my situation to be based on the way that you just described how some women are and what I know about her past that seems to be this blockade that kind of wedges itself in between us when it comes to just simply talking about this stuff. Because she's told me, and I've said on the show before, we get along very well in an emotional way. We're normally, pretty intimate in that space. It just doesn't translate to anything physical. And she's told me like point blank that, hey, I still want to be sexual with you. I still want a sexual relationship with you. It's hard to believe that, though, when those words don't seem to match up with the action. And so that's where I begin to kind of cast some doubt in my own mind about, man, I wonder if she's being honest even with herself, right? And then in turn being honest with me when she says that. So that's where I get stuck in knowing how to be there for her and not try to fix her. And at the same time, have faith in the idea that this is all going to come together at some point, because that's what I really want. But it's a challenge to kind of wait it out, right?
Yeah, well said. I want to ask you a question here, Paul. Certainly, before I ask the question, there's the variable of her belief in herself. There's the variable of her belief in you or the relationship. And then there's the kind of, is she being honest? I have never heard, you could speak up, please. I have never heard of a woman saying she wants more intimacy and just lie about that. Like,
yeah, I don't think that's the case.
Right. Exactly. I don't think that's the case either. If a woman's saying that, and would you agree? If a woman's saying that, she does want that to some extent.
Absolutely. And it actually might really hurt her feelings if she was to be pressed like, well, no, you don't. Like, you're not saying that that's what happens, but it might really.
Yeah.
But no, that I do. I'm just
right.
Whatever the stuck.
So if we start with the premise of believing that she wants that, let me shoot out a couple questions. So do you ever say, and again, what I'm saying is out of context, but like in a good situation, do you ever say, I'm a little concerned we're going to grow apart if we don't like actually come together and explore, have an exploratory session, have, fun together in an intimate way, get in the bath together? Do you ever share yourself vulnerably that way? I'm afraid that we're going to move apart if we don't play together.
Yeah. I've made that very clear to her more recently. Not in a threatening or abrasive way, but it is my truth, guys.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I'm learning what I want, and I'm learning that I deserve to have what I want. And the scary part, of course, I think for any guy in this situation is that if they're the ones doing the work, they may grow apart to a point where this is what I want. It's just not the person I want it with.
That's very possible. I just spoke with a man this morning and yesterday about that. It's very possible. So sure, there's that fear there, but doesn't seem like that's where you are yet, right?
No, because I still got a lot of work ahead of me, and I'm trying to work things out. But yeah, I've come to the conclusion in my mind that, and there's no timeline on it, but for instance, the last 10 years of our marriage is not going to be the next 10.
Sure.
Right. It starts with me. I understand that that's the basis for it all. But as I continue to move through this work and grow myself, if the last 10 years start to look like the next 10 years, then it's going to come down to some really serious decision making at some point, whenever that may be.
That's all valid. And that's a great point. On this call right now, if you're willing, what I'd like to do is have you be specific, and I'll ask you a question here. So Cynthia and I obviously guide people in very advanced situations, and Cynthia does trauma-informed work, somatic experiencing work with women. So where are you now with intimacy with your wife? Like, give us a quick example of how that goes.
Like sexually?
Yeah.
Well, it's been non-existent for several months. I do still want her in that way. I do still desire her. So I do initiate. But I'm at a point now where it's a fine line between becoming completely apathetic and this pilot light that you guys kind of talk about on this show, like almost completely burning out, because I'm so tired of getting the same response. I know what the answer is.
So what happens? Like, we're talking, it's Friday night. I don't know you guys, right? So Friday night, you have a glass of wine, you move toward her, you're wanting to embrace her. Like, what happens?
Yeah, we're sitting on the couch and, doing nothing really all that fun or in particular, and I'll put my hand on her and, maybe it goes from the knee to the thigh and then from the thigh to, other parts of her body. And I'll just kind of look at her and wait for her to give me her undivided attention. Okay. And it's more of a look, because I'm done with saying stuff to her. That doesn't seem to be the way to connect. And she knows what I'm doing, right? She can feel the energy. And she'll either turn her head away, which to me indicates no. She doesn't make any sort of a move back in my direction to indicate that it's a yes. Or she'll just shake her head no.
Okay, so let's say you
that's
try.
The way it's been for.
Yeah, thank you. So let's say you do something like that 10 times over the next month. And in 30 days from now, you're having Saturday morning coffee and you turn to her and you say, and again, this is out of context, what I'm saying, but sure, within a good conversation, you say, hey, it seems as though when I've come to you to play and try sexual intimacy, to touch one another, I don't know your words that you would use. It seems as though you've moved away from me every time over the last month. And I'd love to hear about that. I want to talk about that.
Well, I can tell. Yeah. What I haven't told you yet is her response. I know why she's saying no, according to her.
Okay.
And it's because she has some really deep-seated issues about her body, extremely deep. She doesn't like how she looks. She doesn't like how she feels. And she's obviously, we have 3 kids, so she's gained some weight. And she's just absolutely horrified by her appearance. In addition to that, she feels a lack of intimacy with friends, girlfriends in particular. She feels like she doesn't have any friends at all. No one reaches out to her to make plans. No one contacts her. No one texts her. If she doesn't send a message, no one will reach out to her to check in on her, ask how she's doing, or say, hey, happy Easter. And so she's kind of mildly depressed about those 2 things in particular, that she doesn't have a life outside of her family and her work, and she's got serious body issues. And until she can overcome that, she's suggested kind of implicitly that it's just not going to happen. She's just not going to feel good enough about herself to want to give herself to me in any situation.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate you opening. So with just a few minutes here, let's open just the first layer of what your hunch is. Now, we're not going to try to solve any of this, of course, right in this moment, Paul, but what's your first hunch as what you would explore with that woman, as who you are as a professional? Yeah.
So the I mean, as I know, Paul, that the body image thing, it is huge. And when women talk about that being a barrier, they're not lying, and it's not false. And as silly as it may seem, it really does affect like whether she wants to take someone into her, and there is often the story of, I will wait until everything's perfect and then this will be good. And a lot of women have that kind of story, and for a lot of different things. What I would work with her on is, her personal reckoning with what perfection means, what she gets to feel if she's at the perfect place to have sex versus what she's punishing herself for. But then I would invite in the masculine to almost protect the story that she's creating around that, and actually have a quest and a vision around protecting her from her own worst critic.
Good. So say more, please.
So I have experienced this myself, and then I've worked with other men on this, of actually standing up to her inner voice around that and setting a boundary with it. It's not okay with me that you're so hard on yourself about this. It's not okay with me that you don't get to see yourself as beautiful as I do. And however the words work for you in your relationship, the energy is, okay, inner dragon, inner critic, you don't get to have my wife's mind and soul and heart and sexuality. I'm going to protect you from this. And it's actually guiding her into an understanding of clinging to perfection, of belief that everything at some point will be good, that she won't have to feel any shame, remorse, or hard feelings. And it's allowing her into the space that the feminine gets to be an ever evolving, shape-shifting energy, that is accepted and adored and wanted by the masculine in this world.
Yeah, incredible. Very well said.
That's incredible advice. Yes, yeah. That is the how. Thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, thank you for opening to us, Paul. That was fantastic.
Yeah,
and I want to state for everyone, please be very aware that what Paul said is she wants physical intimacy, and they have a tremendous amount of emotional trust and verbal intimacy. And so what Cynthia just did is to outline the vision, the shared vision of how you approach this, how you approach her inner critic, and how you are the protector and hold the torch for the relationship, for the intimacy space. Yeah. Anything else you'd want to add to that?
I think I'll just going back to, so much we talk here about masculine energy being a healer. And I can only imagine when you're watching months go by and the clock's ticking, whether or not it's like, do I really believe that? Can my presence, can my frame heal her? And I always will say yes. Always. There's nothing more healing to a woman in her perception of herself than the masculine gaze in a way that truly sees the essence of her femininity, that is so different from how she believes it's supposed to be, how it's supposed to fit in the perfect box, be the perfect being. And I don't believe women understand that, or it can be really healed in that, unless it's with this incredible presence and deep knowing that I feel in all of you each and every time sitting on this type of call.
Yeah, thank you for saying. Fantastic. But what question might you have while we have Cynthia here on the call?
Yeah, I'll come in.
Yeah, Jamil, please.
I think you mentioned this in a previous call, but basically, my wife's quite happy for us to do things as a three family and so on. But when there's a suggestion of the two of us doing something, there's a reluctance. So I don't want to be the kind of guy who's just always willing to do things as a three, just so I can be close to her, and then have pushback when I'm trying to initiate something, just the two of us. So that's sort of my dilemma, basically.
Yeah, thank you. Jamil, remind us where you are with the separation process and, let's say, divorce process.
She initiated divorce about 2 years ago, but nothing's happened. It's just in there's no movement on it. We get on pretty well. We see each other all the time, and we're separated. We've got two different households, and we live less than 5 minutes walk from each other.
So what's your, this is a good, you didn't ask a specific question, but let me ask you another one, and then we'll close out for today. Something maybe you can ask Cynthia. Do you feel she's giving you any indication or any sign that she wants more one-on-one adult romantic emotional or physical intimacy with you, over the last year or even 2 years, it sounds like.
Well, intimacy, yes, like in terms of emotional and verbal, but yeah, romantic, I think that's still a step too far for her.
Okay. And how about shared vision together? I would assume no, from what you're telling me.
Not really, because we don't really talk about like we or anything. It's like I'm doing whatever I need to do to parent and survive, and she's doing her thing and she's struggling and I'm slightly struggling. So
okay. And with our time here, assuming that you haven't been hummingbird asking her questions, right? That you haven't been smothering her, assuming that, and assuming it's been many months since you've brought up anything about the relationship, it sounds like, is that true?
I never talk about it.
Okay. So in one sentence, tell us what your heart wants to say to her. What do you want with her?
I want to work towards us being like together again. Ultimately, I mean, I don't know how to pitch it.
Yeah, I put you on the spot, right? And we don't have more time to get into this, but if you and I were working together, and I'll get Cynthia's reaction right now. If you and I were working together, that would be the first thing. Not that we are on a soapbox, guys. Not that please don't write her a letter. Okay. Whenever a man says, I wrote her a letter, either it went badly or really badly. That's pretty much how letters go. Okay. So, but you need to be clear with what you want within one sentence that's powerful to you, that doesn't feel needy to you. Like, mommy, please come back to me. That's not what I mean, of course, but it's coming from you, from your heart, what you do want. Vision has to be involved with you as well. So we have to close out for today. Cynthia, what's your, aside from Jamil obviously being put on the spot and not having thought too much about that, okay, what are your initial
on the spot too? So.
Yeah, what would you add to maybe what I said about a man needing to know what he does want? And she may not want that, but we have to know what we want as a man. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, and I was definitely feeling, and of course you didn't know that question was coming. I was feeling a lot of the, well, she doesn't and she doesn't, versus really feeling what you at the core of you, at the guts of you want. And I think when women don't feel the core and the guts of you, they tend to doubt it or get angry or live in their own stories. Whereas this stuff and the words that come from there, no matter how you speak of them, can be the thing where suddenly there's water pulled away from her eyes and she can feel who you are in that moment, and then really give a more honest answer about what she wants and what she doesn't want.
Yeah, thank you. And what's scary about that is being vulnerable and putting ourselves out there for the potential to be rejected. But we have to be polarizing in what we're going after. Otherwise, we just feel like milk toast. We just feel like squishy. You say, what does it feel like? That was my scientific term. You feel squishy. What does it feel like to a woman if he were to show up and say, yeah, I don't know, kind of, I want to work toward getting back together, and it doesn't feel like powerful from his heart, like he's opening himself. If he's not doing that, what's that like for a woman?
Yeah, it's kind of a
squishy. Yeah,
squishy.
Yeah, like, shitty. Shitty, not good.
It would be like eating milk toast, even though I don't know what it is, but all I can imagine is milk.
You pour milk on toast. That's about it. Yeah. I hear that's what they love in the UK. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I know. I guess it's afraid of the rejection ultimately. Yeah. Because it can be a really sensitive point, and it would just be like, no, and then I'm like, where do I lead from there?
Right. So here's some homework for you. If she said, no, I don't want that, what would be next for you? That's some homework for you. Fantastic. Great to see you guys today. Obviously, we could go much longer, much more deeply with this. If you want to reach out to us, please do. If you want to touch base, no strings attached, greatmenmovemountains.com/contact. Reach out to us. If you're watching this on YouTube, by the way, post in the comments below. What do you want to see next? What do you want to hear more of from either me, Cynthia, topics? Love you guys being here. Bye, guys.